Right. So before I get back into season 2 of the podcast, sorry about the year delay, very busy, but back into the swing of things for season 2, I wanted to recap what we've watched so far on season 1. So I'm going to go through each episode, each of the cast, and take a look at what each of the episodes really entailed and how each episode is important to the story. So the first episode was the pilot. Again, we were introduced to Kevin Arnold, Jack Arnold, Norma Arnold, Karen Arnold, Wayne Arnold, Winnie Cooper, Paul Pfeiffer, and those were our main characters. So, throughout the season, we looked at Kevin being the main focus. We looked at him in the pilot as he tried to understand what happened to his childhood. We get a look at his relationship with Winnie. And we also get a look at how the death of, what's his name? Winnie's brother, who died in the war, and how that affected him growing up. And through that, we also look at Jack Arnold in episode 3, In My Father's Office, and what really makes him tick. Norma Arnold, I don't think there was much about her this season, if I can remember correctly. I think there's a little bit of her and Angel trying to get used to her daughter growing up. Karen has a big episode in that episode, Angel, where she's dating her very progressive boyfriend, and he's very anti-war, and the clash between him and Jack. And Wayne, we see a lot of bugging Kevin. Alright, so those are the main things that happen. So we take a look at the pilot, and it's directed by Steve Miner of Friday the 13th, and it's written by the creators Carol Black and Neil Marlins. And when we look at what happened in this episode through our guest stars, which I usually do, 1 second. Our guest stars for this episode. Full cast. Alright, so we have Coach Cutlip, where we get introduced to the gym class being a major character of the show, and how Kevin's interactions with Coach Cutlip are often very comical, as Coach Cutlip is very serious about gym and working out their minds. Not working out their minds, working out their bodies, just as the other teachers work out their minds. And we also are introduced to Mr. DePerna, which is the principal. This is when Kevin gets in trouble for throwing the apple, because he's trying to kind of make a move to symbolize he's growing up. And Brian Cooper is a major recurring character in the first episode, and he dies going off to war. And it symbolizes a change in 1968 on the opinion of war and opinion of how noble war really was. Eric on Antonio, no, that wasn't really big. It was just, he was just another jock. Alright, and I didn't notice this, but Kevin Arnold's voice, the narrator, was played by Ari Gross opposed to Daniel Stern. So big switch from the pilot. Alright, so let's move on to the second episode, which is called Swingers. And this episode is set at Brian Cooper's funeral. It comes right after the kiss in the park when Kevin comforts Winnie once her brother dies. And all he can think about is Winnie. And the name of the episode comes from them crossing across the baseball diamond and deciding to swing instead of kissing again. And this comes through a theme of the book that Kevin and Paul steal from the library called Everything I Want to Know About Sex But Was Afraid to Ask. I think Woody Allen made a movie about it. Alright, so those are the main themes of the episode. Let's look at the cast again. Again, our writers were Neil Marlins and Carol Black, but they also directed the episode. which I do say it was one of the better directed episodes. It looked very nice. Alright, and our full cast. Again, we see Coach Cutlet. Same type of thing he did in episode 1. Brian Cooper is seen in a ghost scene to Kevin, telling him you can't. What did he say? Oh, he said you can't go after my sister now. You have to wait till she grieves more. This is after Kevin thinks he's going to be mad that Kevin's trying to put the moves on Winnie, but he realizes that wasn't who Brian was. Preacher. We had the store clerk was a famous actress today, Bobby Eakes. I think she was on the soap Bold and the Beautiful and All My Children. And one of the kids in the episode was Douglas Emerson, which I think that's pretty. I think he was in 90210 the first season as Scott Scanlon. That's very interesting. And this is our first episode, uncredited, but this is where Daniel Stern takes over as the narrator voice. So that was our first episode our first episode after the pilot, entitled Swingers, and I think it's probably my favorite so far. Until this one, though. This is called My Father's Office, where Kevin has to ask the question, what does my dad really do at work at Norcom? And this comes from a conversation on the bus when they're unable to say that to two other kids, him and Wayne, on what their father does at Norcom. And the mother doesn't even know either, Norma. So Kevin agrees. Kevin gets his dad reluctantly from Norma's advice to let Kevin go to work with him. And Kevin gets to see how much crap Jack takes at work and for other people as well, and why he's so angry when he gets home. He also is an important time because he shows him going out to see the telescope, and when he really has a bad day, he goes out to the telescope and looks at the stars. So let's take a look at the cast. Again, Neil Marlins and Carol Black write this episode, and it's directed by Jeffrey D. Brown. All right. Zachary Benjamin plays young Kevin when we see him in the flashbacks on times that were good when Jack wasn't so angry, probably before Norcom. And Stan, I think, is the one who gets in trouble at work, where Jack helps him out and said it was his fault. And that's mainly what happens at work. A lot of these guest stars only played a role at the work. All right. So that's probably one of the top 2 episodes of the season. And then we go to a very Karen-centric episode, where Karen isn't communicating with her parents, and things get really bad as she brings home her boyfriend Lewis, who Lewis doesn't eat meat. He's not very monogamous either. And Kevin hears a phone call with him where he's questioning whether Lewis is being faithful to Karen. But Lewis assures Kevin Karen knows that he's not monogamous with her. But later we figure out that she didn't realize that they were sleeping together. And he battles with Jack, not on like eating the meat or his type of lifestyle, but his opinion on war and his opinion that Jack Arnold shouldn't have died. Brian Cooper, shouldn't have died. And we get his kind of anti-war stance against Jack's pro-war stance. And it's a very, very Karen-centric episode. Not one of my favorites, but it's important to establish her as a character. And director was Art Wolf, and again, the creators wrote the episode. And again, we had our main cast. And it's the first episode with Miss White, who becomes a big role in season 2. Well, not a big role, but she plays an important part. And she's played by Wendell Meldrum. John Corbett plays Lewis, Karen's boyfriend for the episode. Joey was Michael Bacall, was one of the people that Kevin and Wayne were arguing with about Nork. No, that was the last episode. My bad. All right, and I think that's all. I think Christine was by Melanie Gaffin played Christine. I think that was the girl that Lewis was talking with on the phone. All right, and that's Angel. Our 5th episode is a good one. It's a very simple one called The Phone Call, where Kevin has a crush on Lisa Berlini. He takes a break from Winnie and tries to get the courage to call Lisa Berlini, and it literally takes him all episode as he tries to find out the courage to call her. And he does figure out that she likes him, but it's just finding the courage to call her. He eventually does after many dream sequences and yelling at Paul to be more interesting so he doesn't have to call her. And it was directed by Jeffrey D. Brown. Very good director. I really liked the look of this episode. And the creators wrote it. So our guest cast was Lisa Berlini, Kathy Wagner. I think she's gone after the next episode, but I think she was a interesting contrast to Winnie. And there was some newscasters in the dream where Kevin thinks that his phone call is being broadcasted to the whole school and whole entire city. And that's all for that episode. But the episode continues in the finale, where Kevin wants to go with Lisa Berlini to the dance, but she says yes. But then just when another guy asks her, I think it was Brad, she says yes to him and says to Kevin, well, he said yes, so I don't have to go with you. And Winnie goes with a major recurring character, Kirk McCrae. And at the dance, they realize that they might not be together. There's a big realization for Kevin that got to live in the moment, and whatever happens will happen. All right, Arlene Sanford. And, we had our recurring characters: Lisa Berlini's last appearance, Brad Gaines, who was Paul Gosselaar, Carla Healy. That was another storyline I missed, that Carla and Paul get together as Paul finally doesn't have to get up the urge to ask her. She comes up to him and asks him to go to the dance, and they have a great time. And Kirk McCrae was played by Michael Landis, who's in a lot of episodes. And Coach Cutlip was at the dance, and he also finds someone to dance with. So that was the majority of a short season 1. I think Dance With Me was probably my least favorite. And the best were probably a tie between Swingers and My Father's Office. All right, well, thank you for listening, and I will record a podcast soon for the second episode of season 2. Thank you.